Hello, my friend. I'm Paul. Welcome to Night of Tales, a quiet refuge for imagination and dreams. Set aside your worries, as tonight we journey together through worlds of magic, mystery, and wonder. Lie back, relax, and let the tales carry you away. Tonight we venture into the monster-haunted world of The Witcher. The rain came down in sheets over Lawn Exeter. Geralt stood beneath the eaves of the copper tankard and watched water cascade from the gutters. The city smelled of wood, stone, and horse dung. Autumn was dying. Winter would come soon to Kovir. He needed coin. The contract notice had been specific. An expedition into the Dragon Mountains required protection. The pay was generous. Too generous, perhaps. Geralt had learned that generous pay often meant generous danger. The scholar waited for him in a private room upstairs. Master Declan wore the black robes of Nilfgaardian academia. His fingers were ink-stained. His eyes held the particular brightness of men who valued knowledge above sense. "You are the Witcher." Declan said this as statement, not question. Geralt nodded. He sat without invitation. The chair creaked under his weight. "I require protection for myself and 3 colleagues. We traveled to ruins in the mountains. Vran ruins, undiscovered by modern scholarship. The Vran died out centuries before the conjunction." Geralt kept his voice flat. "Their ruins are picked clean. Not these." Declan unrolled a map across the table. Shepherds reported strange stones in a valley 3 days north. The descriptions match Vran architecture. Cyclopean blocks. Reptilian carvings. Geralt studied the map. The valley lay in wild country between Kovir and Povis. No roads. No settlements within 20 miles. The shepherds also reported illness in their villages, a wasting sickness, and sightings of something they call a stone serpent. Draconid. Geralt traced the mountain contours with one finger. Probably a forktail. They nest in ruins. Can you kill it? For the right price. They negotiated. Declan started high. Geralt pushed higher. They settled on a sum that would see him through winter with coin to spare. Half now, half upon return. The expedition assembled 3 days later. Declan brought his colleagues. An older woman named Mira who studied ancient languages. Twin brothers, Peter and Jacob, who served as excavators and general labor. They had carts loaded with tools, tents, and supplies. Geralt rode Roach at the head of the column. The mare's breath steamed in the cold air. They followed game trails into the mountains. The trees thinned as they climbed. Pine gave way to bare rock and scrub. On the second day, they passed through one of the afflicted villages. 24 hovels clinging to a hillside. The people looked gaunt, Several coughed wetly into rags. Their skin had a grayish cast. The sickness, Mira observed. She kept her distance. Geralt questioned the village elder. The old man's hands shook. He described how the illness had started a month ago. First the children, then the adults. A dry cough that turned wet. Weakness that progressed to wasting. 3 dead already. Did anything change before the sickness came? Geralt asked. The elder thought. The wind shifted, began blowing from the high valley instead of the peaks. Smelled strange, like old cellars. Geralt filed this away. They moved on. The ruins appeared on the 4th day. The valley opened before them like a cupped hand. At its center, massive stones thrust from scree and earth. The blocks were larger than any human construction. Each had been cut with impossible precision. The joints between them admitted no blade. Reptilian forms coiled across the surfaces. Not decorative, liturgical. The Vran had worshipped their ancestors with religious fervor. Magnificent. Declan breathed the word like a prayer. Geralt studied the ruins with a witcher's eye. The stones showed erosion patterns consistent with great age. Millennia, not centuries. But some areas looked disturbed. Fresh scratches marked several blocks. Something large had passed this way recently. He dismounted and examined the scratches. Claw marks. For talons, splayed wide. Definitely draconid. The depth suggested significant weight. We may camp outside the ruins. Geralt turned to face the scholars. No one enters until I've scouted. Declan opened his mouth to protest. Geralt's expression stopped him. They pitched tents in a clearing 50 yards from the nearest stones. Geralt left them to their work and entered the ruins alone. His silver sword rested easy across his back. His steel blade hung at his hip. The Vran had built in layers. Upper structures had collapsed, creating a maze of fallen blocks and narrow passages. Geralt moved through them carefully. His cat eyes pierced the shadows. His witcher senses reached out, testing the air. He smelled old stone and older death. Something else beneath it. Organic decay, but strange. Not quite rot. More like fermentation. The passages descended. Geralt followed them down into darkness. The lower levels remained largely intact. The Vran had carved chambers directly from living rock. Their walls bore more of the reptilian script. Geralt could not read it, but he recognized funerary inscriptions. The repeated patterns. The formal arrangement. This had been a necropolis. He found the forktail's nest in what had once been a grand hall. The creature had dragged in bones and debris to make its bed. Most were animal remains. Deer, mountain goats, a bear. But Geralt also spotted human bones. recent ones still showing tissue. The shepherds who had discovered this place, perhaps. The forktail itself was absent. Hunting, most likely. Geralt examined its nest more closely. Beneath the bones he found Vran artifacts. Pottery shards. Corroded metal. The creatures often hoarded shiny objects. He also found an opening in the far wall. A passage leading deeper still. The strange smell grew stronger there. Geralt approached cautiously. The passage ended at a sealed door. Massive stone blocks fitted together with Vran precision. But the seal had been broken. Recently, claw marks scarred the edges where something had worried at the stones. The forktail, trying to expand its territory. A gap remained, wide enough for a man to squeeze through. The smell poured from it like water, organic and thick. Geralt's Witcher metabolism reacted with mild nausea. He controlled it and peered into the darkness beyond. A burial chamber. He could make out stone sarcophagi arranged in rows. The Vran had interred their dead with ceremony. But something had disturbed the graves. Several sarcophagi stood open. Their contents were visible even in the dim light filtering through the gap. Desiccated reptilian corpses. The Vran had been tall, their bodies lean and scaled. These had been important individuals, judging by the grave goods surrounding them. But decay had claimed them as it claimed all flesh. What remained was leather and bone wrapped in rotting cerments. And fungus. Gray-white growths covered the corpses like fur. They formed thick mats across the chamber floor. Geralt recognized them as some form of preservation technique. The Vran had used spores to mummify their dead. The fungus had kept the bodies intact for millennia, until the forktail broke the seal. Now the spores filled the air. Geralt could see them drifting in the shaft of light. Thousands of tiny particles floating on the underground currents, finding their way up through the passages, out into the valley. Carried by the wind to the villages below. The wasting sickness. Geralt backed away from the chamber. He needed to inform Declan. This changed the contract significantly. They were not dealing with a simple draconid extermination. The scholars wanted to study the ruins, but exposure to those spores would kill them. He retraced his path through the passages, climbed back toward daylight, emerged from the ruins to find the camp in motion. The scholars had unpacked their tools and were preparing to enter. Declan saw him approach. "We are ready to begin our survey." "What did you find?" Geralt told him. The forktail, the burial chamber, the spores, the connection to the village sickness. He watched Declan's face cycle through excitement and disappointment. The chamber must remain sealed. Geralt made it clear. The spores are deadly. They have already killed villagers. If you breach that tomb, you will release more. But the archaeological value. Declan gestured helplessly. an intact Vran burial chamber. The artifacts alone would rewrite our understanding of their culture. Your understanding is not worth human lives, they argued. Mira supported Geralt's position. The twins remained silent. Declan grew increasingly agitated. He had not come this far, spent this much, to turn back at the threshold of discovery. We could take precautions. Declan's voice took on a wheedling tone. Wet cloths over our faces. Seal the chamber afterward. No. I am paying you for protection, not advice. Then I am telling you what I am protecting you from. Yourselves, apparently. The argument continued through the afternoon. Geralt remained immovable. Declan grew desperate. Finally, as sunset approached, the scholar made his decision. We will examine the upper levels only. The collapsed structures. Surely there is no danger there? Geralt considered. The upper ruins showed no sign of spore contamination. The forktail's nest posed a risk, but he would be there to handle any encounter. The upper levels only. He agreed. And you follow my instructions exactly. They entered the ruins in the fading light. Geralt led them through the safest passages. The scholars exclaimed over every carving, every architectural detail. They made sketches and notes, measured blocks, photographed inscriptions. Darkness fell. They worked by lantern light. Geralt stood watch, his senses extended. The forktail had not yet returned, but it would. Draconids were territorial. It would smell the intruders. Near midnight, Piotr called out. He had found a section of wall that seemed hollow. The twins worked at it with crowbars. Stone scraped against stone. A block shifted. Carefully. Mira cautioned. The structure may be unstable. The block came free. Behind it, another passage opened. This one angled down sharply. The strange smell wafted up from it. Now stronger. Unmistakable. Stop. Geralt moved toward them. That passage leads to the burial level. But curiosity had seized them. Declan pushed forward with his lantern. The light revealed stairs descending into darkness. Carvings covered the walls, more elaborate than anything they had seen above. Just a quick look. Declan started down before Geralt could stop him. The others followed. Geralt cursed and went after them. The stairs ended at another sealed door. This one stood fully open. The forktail's work, Geralt realized. The creature had found a second entrance to the burial chamber. It must use both passages, rotating between them, which meant it could be anywhere. Declan raised his lantern. The light fell across rows of stone sarcophagi. The Vran dead rested in silent ranks. Fungal growth covered everything. The air hung thick with spores. They caught the light like mist. Extraordinary. Declan moved deeper into the chamber. His colleagues followed like moths to flame. Geralt remained at the entrance. His witcher senses screamed warning. Too many threats at once. The spores filling his lungs. The unstable chamber. The absent forktail that could return at any moment. Cover your faces. He kept his voice level. Do not touch anything. We leave. Mira had already tied cloth across her nose and mouth. The twins followed her example, but Declan paid no attention. He bent over an open sarcophagus, examining the desiccated corpse within. The preservation is remarkable. Look at the detail in the scales. And these grave goods. He lifted a corroded metal disc. Fungus flaked from it. This could be a religious medallion, or perhaps a sigil of rank. Put it down. The inscriptions here are different from the upper levels. More archaic. This may be a royal burial, or a priestly cast. Geralt heard it then. A distant scraping. Stone against scale. The forktail was in the ruins, moving through the passages. Coming home. We leave. He drew his silver sword. All of you. Back the way we came. The sound grew louder. Not coming from above. From somewhere else. Another passage, another entrance. The ruins were a warren. Geralt had not mapped them all. The forktail emerged from a side passage at the far end of the burial chamber. It was large. 12 feet of scaled muscle and leathery wings. Its head resembled a crocodile's, long and narrow, filled with teeth. The twin-tail appendages that gave it its name writhed behind it like serpents. The creature saw them. Its eyes reflected the lantern light, glowing amber. It hissed, the sound echoing off stone walls. Declan stumbled backward, dropped his lantern. The glass shattered. Burning oil spread across the chamber floor. Flames licked at the fungal growth. It caught immediately, burning with a blue-white light. The forktail screamed. Fire was one of the few things draconids feared, but it also blocked their escape route. The flames spread between them and the stairs. Geralt assessed their options. The chamber had multiple passages, but he did not know where they led. The forktail stood between them and the only exit he had mapped. And now fire was consuming the centuries-old growth, releasing more spores into the air. The scholars coughed behind their makeshift masks. Jacob's cough turned wet. He had breathed too many spores already. The forktail advanced. Its movements were cautious. It did not like the fire, but it liked intruders in its territory even less. The twin tails lashed the air. Each ended in a barbed spike. Poisoned, most likely. Forktail venom caused paralysis. Geralt stepped forward to meet it. His silver sword caught the firelight. The blade had been forged specifically for monsters. It would cut through the creature's scales where steel would only skitter and scrape. The forked tail lunged, fast despite its size. Geralt sidestepped and slashed at its neck. His blade opened a shallow wound. Black blood welled. The creature spun, tail spikes whistling through the air where Geralt's head had been. They circled each other. The fire burned higher. Smoke mixed with spores. The scholars pressed against the far wall. Trapped. Geralt needed to end this quickly. He reached for the sign of heart. His fingers formed the gesture. Power gathered in his palm. He thrust it toward the forktail. The telekinetic blast struck the creature in the chest. It staggered but did not fall. Draconids were heavy, solid, but the blast had pushed it back several feet. Geralt pressed his advantage. He lunged, sword extended, aimed for the soft scales beneath the jaw. The forktail twisted its head aside at the last moment. His blade scored its cheek instead. More blood flowed. The creature's tail struck like a whip. Geralt felt the spike pierce his left shoulder. Pain bloomed. His arm went numb immediately. The venom worked fast. He switched his sword to his right hand. Stepped back. Assessed the damage. The wound was not deep, but the paralysis was spreading. His left arm hung useless at his side. The forktail sensed weakness. It charged. Geralt had no room to dodge in the confined chamber. Instead, he dropped to one knee and raised his sword. Let the creature's own momentum drive it onto the blade. Silver steel punched through the scales beneath the forktail's chest. Slid between ribs. Found the heart. The creature's charge carried it forward, driving the sword deeper. Its jaws snapped inches from Geralt's face. Then it collapsed. Dead weight crashed into him. Geralt went down beneath it. The sword was trapped. The creature's blood poured over him. Hot and stinking. He lay there for a moment, caught his breath, then began working his way free. The twins helped pull the forktail's corpse off him. Geralt stood slowly. His left arm remained paralyzed. He retrieved his sword and wiped it clean on the creature's hide. The fire still burned. It had consumed most of the fungal growth in the immediate area. Blue-white flames danced across the stone floor. The heat was becoming oppressive. Jacob's coughing grew worse. He bent double, hacking wetly. When he straightened, blood flecked his lips. "We need to leave." Myra's voice was muffled by her mask. "The spores and the smoke will kill us." Geralt looked at the spreading fire, then at the burial chamber, then at the scholars who had ignored every warning to reach this place. A decision crystallized. Help me gather the oil. He indicated the shattered lanterns. All of it. And anything else that burns. Declan understood first. No. You cannot mean to. This chamber must be destroyed. The spores must be burned. Completely. Or more people will die. But the artifacts, the knowledge, is worth nothing against human lives. They argued again. Shorter this time. Geralt's tone left no room for negotiation. The twins, practical men, saw the necessity. They began gathering oil. Mira helped them, shooting apologetic glances at Declan. The scholar tried one last time. Surely we can salvage something. Take samples. Document what we find. No. The risk is too great. One spore escaping is too many. They worked quickly. Geralt's arm was beginning to regain sensation. Painful pins and needles, but at least he could move his fingers. The Witcher metabolism was processing the venom. Another hour and he would have full function back. They poured oil across the remaining sarcophagi, soaked the fungal growth. Geralt used Igni to ignite it. The sign was weak with only one working arm, but sufficient. Flames roared up. The chamber became an inferno. Heat drove them back. They retreated up the stairs, through the passages, out into the cold mountain night. Behind them, the fire consumed everything. The Vran dead, their grave goods, millennia of undisturbed history. Geralt watched smoke pour from gaps in the ruins. He felt no regret. Knowledge was valuable, but not infinitely so. There were limits to what should be preserved. The scholar stood in silence. Declan's face was blank. Shock, perhaps, or grief for the lost discovery. The twins supported Jacob between them. The young man's breathing was labored. His skin had taken on the same grayish cast as the village elders. We need to get him to a healer. Myra's voice was tight. And ourselves. We all breathed the spores. Geralt nodded. His own lungs felt heavy. Witcher resilience would protect him, but the scholars were more vulnerable. Especially Jacob, who had been closest to the sarcophagi. They broke camp in darkness, loaded their supplies onto the carts. Geralt rigged a bed for Jacob in one of the wagons. The young man was fading fast. His twin sat beside him, holding his hand. The journey back took 3 days. They pushed hard, stopping only when the horses needed rest. Geralt rode ahead to the afflicted village. Spoke again with the elder. He described the symptoms he had seen. The progression from cough to wasting to death. Asked what herbs the local healer had tried. Most were ineffective, but one combination seemed to slow the disease. Willow bark and lungwort boiled into a tea. It was not enough, but it suggested a direction. Fungal infections responded to certain compounds. Geralt knew some from his training. He sent the elder to gather ingredients, prepared a stronger mixture, brought it back to Jacob. The young man drank it, grimaced at the bitter taste, but his breathing eased slightly. The grayish tint to his skin lightened. Will he live? Piotr asked. Perhaps. If we reach Lawn Exeter in time. They made it with a day to spare. Jacob survived. The healers in Lawn Exeter had better tools and knowledge. They confirmed Geralt's diagnosis. Fungal infection of the lungs. Treatable if caught early. Fatal if allowed to progress. All 4 scholars required treatment. Geralt too, though his symptoms were mild. The Witcher mutations protected him from the worst effects. He spent 2 days in the healer's ward, drinking foul teas and submitting to examinations. Declan visited on the 3rd day. The scholar looked haggard. He had lost weight. Stress and illness combined. I have completed my report. Declan's voice was flat. I am attributing the expedition's failure to bandit attack. Safer than explaining about the forktail or the spores. Wise. The university will accept it. They have no reason to investigate further. The ruins are remote, likely to remain undiscovered for another few centuries. Also wise. Declan was silent for a moment. You destroyed something irreplaceable. Knowledge that could have advanced our understanding immeasurably. I destroyed a plague vector. Nothing more. Can you truly believe that? Geralt met his eyes. Yes. The final accounting took place in the copper tankard, the same private room where they had first negotiated. Rain still fell over Lawn Exeter. Winter was now closer. The first snow would come within days. Declan laid out the payment, half of what they had agreed. He counted it twice, then pushed it across the table. You destroyed the subject of our expedition. I consider the contract void. This represents payment for your protection services. Nothing more. Geralt examined the coin. It was enough to see him through winter. Barely. But he had expected this. Scholars value knowledge above all else. Declan would see the burned chamber as betrayal rather than necessity. Acceptable. He swept the coin into his purse. I suppose you think I should thank you for saving our lives. No. Good. Because I do not feel grateful. I feel robbed. Geralt stood. That is your right. But the people in those villages will live. Their children will not die coughing blood. That should count for something. To you, perhaps. Not to history. They parted without further words. Geralt collected Roach from the stables and rode south, away from Kovir, away from the mountains and their buried secrets. He stopped once at the afflicted village. The elder reported that the sickness was fading. No new cases in the past week. The winds had shifted again, blowing from the peaks instead of the valley. Whatever spores remained were dispersing harmlessly. Geralt gave the elder his recipe for the fungal treatment, wrote it down in clear script, explained how to gather and prepare the herbs. The old man accepted it with trembling hands. "You saved us." The elder's eyes were wet. "We had no hope. Now we have years ahead. Use them well." Geralt rode on. He would not tell the villagers about the ruins. Better they remained ignorant. Ignorance was safer than curiosity. Curiosity had nearly killed them all. The road wound south through increasingly familiar territory. Geralt had traveled this way before, would travel it again. The path never ended. There were always more contracts, more monsters, more people who needed protection from things they did not understand. Sometimes protection meant killing beasts. Sometimes it meant destroying knowledge. The principle was the same. Keep people alive. That was the Witcher's purpose. Not glory. Not discovery. Just survival. One contract at a time. He made camp that night in a roadside clearing. Built a small fire. Heated water for tea. His shoulder still ached where the fork-tailed spike had pierced him. The venom was long purged, but the wound remained tender. Small price for success. Geralt sat by his fire and watched stars emerge between the clouds. Somewhere to the north, the ruins still smoldered. Now the Vran burial chamber was ash. Its secrets lost forever. Declan would mourn that loss. Write papers about what might have been discovered. Spend years regretting the knowledge destroyed. But the villagers would live. Their children would grow to adulthood. They would farm and hunt and raise families. They would never know how close they had come to extinction. Never know what had been sacrificed to save them. That was acceptable. Geralt had no need for gratitude. He had coin, he had his life, and he had done what needed doing. That was enough. The fire burned low. He added more wood. Pulled his cloak tighter against the cold. Winter would be harsh this year. He could feel it in his bones. But he had survived worse. Would survive this too. The path continued. South to Wizima, or east to Oxenford, or wherever the next contract called him. It did not matter. The destination was never the point. Only the journey. Only the work. Geralt finished his tea, banked the fire, rolled himself in his bedroll beneath the stars. Sleep came easily, dreamless and deep. The sleep of a man who knew his purpose. Tomorrow he would ride on. There would be other villages, other monsters. other impossible choices between knowledge and survival. He would make those choices when they came, not before. Worry was wasted energy. Planning beyond the next contract was futile. Life on the path taught that lesson quickly. Live in the moment. Kill the monster. Collect the coin. Move on. Simple principles. They had served him for decades. Would serve him for decades more. Until age or injury or simple bad luck caught up with him. Until some monster proved faster or stronger or luckier. But not today. Not this contract. Today he had one. The forktail was dead. The spores were burned. The villagers would live. That was victory enough. Geralt closed his eyes and let sleep take him. The rain had stopped. Stars gleamed cold and distant. The world turned beneath them, indifferent to human concerns. Monsters hunted in the darkness. People huddled in their homes. And witchers walked the path between them. Necessary. Feared. Alone. It was enough. It had to be.